Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We'll be starting in about 2 minutes. We had a few technical difficulties a little earlier, but we are getting them all ironed out. If you can see the screen, which there should be 2 pictures right now, and hear me, if you can put a 1 in the chat area, that would be great. Okay, great, awesome, wonderful. There's one more second. All righty. And now, let me know if you can see the presentation slide. And Ralph, can you see and hear me on your end? Okay, awesome. People can see and hear me. So we want to make sure that you can see and hear the other presenter. 1 second. Yes, Chris, that's okay. As long as they can get in, the information is open for everyone.
Janine, this is Ralph and Karen. Can you hear us?
Yay, okay, I can hear you now.
All right, good.
Sorry about the slight delay, everyone. You know, technology works when it's great, but when it doesn't. Can everyone hear Ralph? Ralph, if you could just say good morning, well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon at this point.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Wonderful. So we're going to get started right away. My name is Janine Biggins. I'm the host for our wonderful webinar today, Growing Your Business Through Subcontracting, which is going to be presented by SCORE and SBA. Just a few housekeeping rules. This webinar is being recorded, so if you have to leave early or you miss information, it will be sent to you within 48 hours, and we'll send you the presentation as well as the slides so you can review them. And the slides do have the contact information for our presenters today. At the top of your screen, if for some reason you are having problems viewing the screen or you get it freezes, just hit the reconnect button and then you should be all set. We will hold all questions to the end. However, if during the webinar you have questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box area and we will try to review them and answer them appropriately at the end of the webinar. So I think that's all for me. So today's webinar is Growing Your Business Through Subcontracting. And our 2 presenters are Karen Williams from the SCORE chapter, the DC SCORE chapter, and Ralph Buchanan from SBA. All questions can be submitted, like I said, online during the session, and a copy of this webinar will be posted on the Washington, D.C. SCORE.org page, and you will receive an email regarding when the presentation, the replay will be available. And I think we can go ahead. Karen, you want to get started?
Absolutely. And welcome to everyone who has joined our webinar. I hear a little bit of feedback. Okay, Janine, you probably went on mute. So welcome, everyone. I'm Ralph. I'm really pleased you're here today.
Likewise.
We are part, those of us in the Metro DC area, of the SBA Washington Metro Area District. You can see the map there. So it's Washington, DC, and all of the surrounding counties. Our objective for today's session is to develop an understanding of how to grow your business through subcontracting. Many small businesses are interested in the federal contract space, and a good way to start is as a subcontractor. So what Ralph and I are going to discuss today are some of the steps that you can take to enter that space as a subcontractor. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about SCORE. So SCORE is a nonprofit resource partner of the Small Business Administration. We were founded in 1964 and have been in business with the sole purpose of helping entrepreneurs grow their business. We provide free mentoring services. And Janine, if you can flip to the next 2 slides, you can see we do one-on-one mentoring, we provide workshops, and we support business advisory services. Just last year, we helped create over 53,000 new businesses across the United States, 65,000 new jobs, and helped 38,000 businesses actually increase their revenue. Our clients are dominated by women. 56% of our clients are women, 31% of our clients are minorities, and 12% of our clients are vets. Next slide, please, Janine, and the next one after that. And who do we help? Companies that are thinking about starting a business. They're in that pre-startup phase. Companies that have actually opened, and then companies that have been in business for a while, but are interested in growing. And you will get my contact information and the SCORE contact information at the end of this presentation. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ralph Buchanan from the Small Business Administration, and we will begin how to grow your business through subcontracting. Ralph, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Janine, for the opportunity to speak to the audience that's out there. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody that is in business for themselves. What you do matters. I always tell small businesses, what you do matters. 90% of all the businesses in the United States are small businesses. So we hear a lot about what some of the larger companies are doing and things like that. And sure, they are blazing some of that trail and pushing water and things like that. But you guys are in that smaller PT boat. You guys have the ability to be a little bit more nimble and whatnot in what you do. So as a representative of SBA, I want to bring some information to you on subcontract assistance and a way to think about this as a revenue stream. If you go to the next slide, this is a chart that we put up quite often. And just to brag on SBA for a second here, I think for the last 5 years, the last 4 years in a row, that the federal government has made its mandate of 23% of all of its work going to small business. So last year, I think it was about $91 billion. We don't have the numbers in just yet for FY17 because the fiscal year just ended, but I'm sure it's going to be something close to that in terms of representation. And then when you see the 3, 5, 5, and 3, that is how the work is supposedly earmarked in each one of those socioeconomic groups. So that does not add up to 23%. It's not supposed to. 23% is the small business subcontracting, the small business contracting, and then the 3, 5, 5, and 3. It's just how it's set up in each one of socioeconomics. But what I like to tell people up here is when you look at that number and those colored slices of the pie, that's that 23% that we're talking about operating in. And if you guys were in front of me right now, I would have you cross your arms one way, and then I would have you cross them the other way, because we want to talk about that green area. That's a good 77% of the pie is going to someone that is other than small. We call them other than small as opposed to large. So I just wanted to give you that graphically so you could kind of see that, okay? The SBA subcontracting program exists strictly for the reasons to ensure that there is maximum practical opportunities in federal government subcontracting awards. And so we'll talk about that a little while later, but you can go to our website and you can find all the information you need on the subcontracting program, specifically resources that can help you, connecting you with other than small businesses, subnet. We'll talk about some of those things as we go forward. But the thing I want you to remember is maximum practical opportunity. Next slide. So for any contract that's greater than 150,000, we have to provide that practical opportunity. And for any contract that's over 700,000, that's soon to go to 750, by the way, 1.5 million for construction, we have to actually put a plan in place. So if you are a large business, you have to literally put your money where your mouth is and say, okay, my contract is for $20 million and I'm putting a certain amount away for subcontracting based on those socioeconomic groups that we mentioned before. Now, as you see on the bottom of that slide, it says it applies only to other than small or large businesses. So if you're a small business, you don't have to put a subcontracting plan together. We're not burdening a small business to further subcontract out, okay? Just a point I wanted to make, okay? So when you are looking at subcontracting as a discipline, and I recommend that you look at it as a discipline. There are a lot of people that, and I'm just going to digress here for a second, but I'll be right back. There are folks that have, I want you to think of it as a revenue stream. So you might have one way you deliver your product or service, and then maybe you sell some things on the internet, and maybe you have, a brick and mortar store, and maybe and so I just want you to look at it that way. When we're starting to talk about subcontracting, there are people that you need to meet along the way. And one of the first ones up there is that procurement center representative. So they're involved pre-award. So while the government is going through their market research and they're trying to figure out how best to take their requirement to an actual contract, remember, the government is looking at getting a fair and reasonable service from someone that can perform the work. So they're going to look at you in light of that. Can you do what I need done? Is it fair and reasonable from a cost standpoint? But that procurement center representative, I just wanted to mention to you guys, these are SBA employees that are embedded in the various agencies across the country. So think of them as a resource that you can use. They're trying to move the work towards some of those socioeconomics. They need your help. That's somebody you need to contact with.
So Ralph, let me interrupt you for a second. So they are very important in the whole procurement cycle. How do I find the procurement center reps? Okay. How do I search to find those?
Well, right there on the bottom. So at the very bottom of that slide, we have a web link there, and that'll take you to our contracting and subcontracting page, and you can find those guys. It'll be a map. You'll see a map, and it'll be broken out into 6 areas across the country. You click on that area of the country, you find the area director, your PCR.
Perfect.
And that's it. Okay. Yeah. So the PCR is on the front end. So think about it. The government has come up with a requirement, and now they're trying to do their market research, and they're trying to decide, okay, are there small businesses out there that can do this? Do I have to go large? Things of that nature. The PCR is sitting at the table. The PCR has to sign off on that acquisition strategy as it goes along. So if you never see, for folks that are maybe a little bit more sophisticated, if you look at a forecast, for example, and you see that for acquisition strategy it says TBD, it's not too late for you because they haven't decided what they want to do. My point was just to make sure you knew there was somebody on our side that could help you out before the fact. Now, after the fact, okay, they have decided we've lost. Let's say we've lost. They've decided that they're going to give that work to Booz Allen Hamilton or whoever it is. The commercial market representative, which in this area, that's me. My job revolves around compliance to make sure, okay, I want to make sure you guys are subcontracting the amounts that you said you were going to do based on the subcontract plan you had to put together. So I know I gave you a lot there, but I wanted to try to drive that point home. Next slide. Okay. This is This is my role as a commercial market representative. And this literally comes right out of the CFR, 13 CFR 125.3. So that's my table of contents, that's my Bible, that's my gospel. So this is what I'm supposed to do. Facilitate the matching of large firms with small business concerns. The large businesses will have their own databases, but if there's any time when they're having difficulties locating someone, I can kind of step in there and say, hey, I got somebody here that can do it, somebody that can do it. Counsel the large primes on their responsibilities. Doing that all the time. We're getting ready to go to more of an online method of counseling so that we're training these guys routinely. And that's just economy of scale, trying to go from one-to-one conversations to one-to-many conversations. Instruct a large business on how to identify small business concerns. Counsel small businesses such as yourself. One of the reasons that I'm doing this webinar today, we have to get that message out there that what you do matters and try to get you guys out there. Number 5, maintain a portfolio of companies to help them with that compliance. And then number 6 are the various reviews. I just wanted you to know that in this area 2 alone, there are over 1,000 companies that have subcontracting plans. So you can imagine I'm a very busy guy. We'll just leave it at that. Okay, but that's what I do, if you will. Next slide. This is what I cannot do. So I cannot say to a large business, thou shalt subcontract out this amount. That's already been negotiated back when it was awarded and signed off on, and they've said we're going to subcontract a certain amount in these various areas. I cannot dictate to them what they're doing. And I cannot say you will use company XYZ. I can suggest, but I cannot demand, okay? Because it's their show and I'm driving compliance, okay? Next slide. So some strategies to go through. And what we decided to do here, Karen's going to come back and talk to you a little while later, but I'm trying to talk to you from a government perspective as it relates to these strategies. And then she'll come back with some information that we have gotten from some large businesses, okay? So again, the first thing up there, and I got it in bold, treat this as a revenue stream. So when you're trying to market to various agencies, first of all, I tell people an agency is very, very, very big. It's probably too big for you. You should really try to find a way to drill down in that organization into the offices or buying components, into the directorates beneath them and such. For example, I'm sitting in the Washington Metro Area District Office. Well, SBA is the organization. The Office of Field Operations is that office. And then the district office, of which there are 68 across the United States, is where I'm sitting right now. What I'm trying to say to you guys, and my point is this. As you drive down into the organization, the lower you can drive down into the organization, the better your relationships are going to be, and the better influence you're going to have going forward with your contract definitions. So anyway, treat it as a revenue stream. Perform the same market research that the government is performing and the large businesses performing. Identify who those subcontracting opportunities are. I tell people, and I said it before, I showed it to you graphically at the very beginning. So if you can believe it or not, you really have two customers. You have the federal government itself, and then you have that 77%, which are the big boys and the big girls. So wherever you are going to work in an agency, one of the first things you should try to find out is who are the big or large companies in this agency, in this office, in this directorate that I'm trying to support. That's the beginning of your pipeline. Market your services and then develop a unique strategy. We'll go through each one of these. Okay, next slide. Now, when you look at trying to find out where some of the money is, you hear a lot of people talk about following the money. FPDS is probably the preeminent tool. USA Spending is as well, but FPDS is from the standpoint of anything over $3,500. Now, $3,500 is the micro purchase threshold. If it's below $3,500, you could just make your case. You know, they can say, we want you to do it. Bam, you're off and running. You got a contract. Anything over $3,500, they have to put it in FPDS. And FPDS is tracking contracts of that magnitude or higher, and they're tracking as well contract modifications. So you'll be able to see where all of the money is, and you'll be able to slice it and dice it by NAICS code, type of work. What's circled there, and I know it's not that clear, is you can slice and dice it by company. FPDS will allow you to get to the top 100 contractors that are out there. That might be something that's very important to you. And it also will allow you to see by product, goods, or services where you're trying to go. So when you talk about following the money, this is a place to kind of get started, okay? Once you kind of know where that money is, now it's about you building those relationships, okay?
So, Ralph, one of the things, and I see a lot of small businesses who are interested in the federal space, I can't emphasize enough to do this market research, which is exactly what Ralph is saying. The FPDS, which stands for Federal Procurement Data Source System.
Next generation. Yeah.
Is a repository of every contractual action that has had some activity in the last 10 years. So it's huge and it's very powerful. But to Ralph's point, you must identify an agency or a prime contractor or use your NAICS code to then start parsing that data so that you know who are the prime contractors in a given agency at a given department level. This market research is absolutely invaluable. And using this tool and the next one that Ralph's going to talk about is really, I think, the place to start.
And to ram that point home that Karen just mentioned, when you think about the acquisition lifecycle, on the government side, it starts with the requirement. They have to have some sort of need. Once they have some sort of need, they're trying to put together an acquisition strategy. So they're doing their market research to see who's out there. You know, they're looking at their goals. They want to see where they are, you know, in terms of their goals, because it might push them to make it, you know, a small business or a set aside or something of that nature. But what I'm saying is the government is systematically going down the road of doing their market research. You need to do the same thing, okay? Don't sit back and wait until you see something on FedBizOps or something like that, because by then you have lost your influence and you are now down and into a reactive mode. So I tell people, the smaller you are, think about getting involved early as possible in the acquisition lifecycle, because now you can have some of those conversations. Eventually that door is going to shut and you can't have a conversation without a solicitation and amendments and things of that nature. So do not waste that precious time. So a tip from me is, if you are going to be involved in federal contracting, find an agency, drill down from that agency into an office or offices. You want to become the most knowledgeable person in that office. Don't go anywhere else. Grow from the inside out. That would be my tip. But it starts with the market research so that you know what's going on within your agency. Next slide. Right. So here you can identify opportunities as well. We have, SBA has Subnet. Subnet allows the government to put out solicitations, notices of sources sought, and as well as events. So if the large businesses having an industry day, they can say, hey, I'm having this industry day. I'm looking for women-owned small businesses, things of that nature. This is an opportunity through Subnet for you guys to go out and look and see if there's some subcontracting opportunities for you. The reason Subnet is becoming a little bit more important, we just rolled it out again, so it's brand new, it's been put out, is because when those large companies come back and say, I couldn't find somebody, this is the answer to I couldn't find anybody, okay? Did you put it out on Subnet? So that's what we're going to be asking them. So I'm just going to to make sure you guys knew as well. When you talk about the forecast, remember the forecast is really really an operational plan for that year. So they're saying, this is what we think we're going to do in these 4 quarters of this fiscal year. Okay. And right now, as some of you guys know, we're in a continuing resolution. All the more reason to get out and do your market research and have conversations with folks. Folks are around right now. They're going to be around right now. Their phone numbers are going to work right now. Their email addresses are going to be around right now because they can't buy things except essential service items right now. Great time to go connect. The forecast is what's going on right now. If you go back further in that life cycle, the strategic plan is going to be where they are on basically a 3-year look. So you look somewhere between 1 and 3 years. That's what's going to happen in their strategic plan. And those forecasts and their strategic plans are up on their website. I'm telling you to go visit those large contractors and visit their small business liaison officers. You might hear a phrase like supplier diversity, same thing. These are the large contractors' points of contact for subcontracting. So you need to go meet these people because they're looking for you and you need to be looking for them. And then obviously review the solicitation or Fed BizOps because that is the agreed upon place to publicize solicitations. Next slide. Okay, so market your services and products to the prime. If it's an agency for you, treat it as such. Establish the relationships with the program managers and the end users. Much easier for you guys in a business to business scenario than it is for a business to government scenario. You guys could go out golfing with them, it's no problem, right? You guys can wine and dine them, it's no problem. With us, there are certain rules in place. But what I'm trying to tell you is get out there, meet those large businesses where they are, and go to their pre-solicitation meetings as such. Next slide. Okay. Here's an example of what I would consider a unique marketing strategy. You just don't show up. So you have some sort of contract within that organization. That's why I'm always trying to tell companies to not try to be all over the place. Let's bring it back in. Let's focus on an agency, one office in an agency, maybe a directorate in that office, because I want you to be the smartest person on that topic. And as they grow and they're looking for other resources, I want you to be part of that discussion. And you have it by having a contract in the agency. Or maybe you have some sort of relationships within the agency. You've met maybe the guy in the office next door, and you're starting to develop those relationships. That's very important. The other thing on there is you see recent and relevant past performance. Recent means it's happened in the last 3 years. Relevant means just that it's applicable work. You're not selling hot dogs. If you're an IT vendor, you're doing some sort of IT work. That's very important. So even that requires you as a small business to start managing your contracts because you don't want those contracts to get too old before you come back and get something else because you want them to be recent. Have you teamed with the large businesses before? They're going to be more open to a relationship where I know you and we've done some work together. And you guys might have unique experiences. One of the good things about being a small business is you can bring something that's very niche orientated that says, hey, this is what I do, and I can do this cheaper and faster and better than maybe a large prime can because they'd have much more higher rates. So that's a unique strategy that I wanted you guys to kind of go through. The next slide is actually going to be my contact information. If you go to the next slide. Okay. I just wanted to leave it up there for a split second just because that phone number is there. But I know Karen's going to come back at the end and she's going to have both of our contact information together. But I wanted to use that as a transition.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you, Ralph.
We
appreciate it very much. Janine, let's go to the next slide. About 2 years ago, Ralph Buchanan, who's here with us today, and an advisory company called Aronson that provides, I would say, consulting services in this space, in the federal space, put together a presentation here at SBA on how to become a preferred subcontractor in the federal contracting market. And Ralph presented the information that similar to what you just heard. And then what Aronson did is took it from a different point of view and said, okay, if I am the prime contractor, what am I looking for, and how do I, have a firm that is my preferred supplier? So I wanted to share with you in this webinar some of the material that Aronson and SBA pulled together so that you would have this information as well. So let's go to the first slide. So what Aronson indicated is how to become a preferred subcontractor. And so I'm going to make the assumption that those of you on the phone are interested in being a subcontractor. And so the first recommendation is understand what motivates the prime contractors. And as you can see, the only true mission statement is that you want to be able to provide the owner or owners of the firm with a rate of return on their investment that's better than they can receive by investing their resources elsewhere. And so you do this by helping them win new business and performing the business that they win profitably. And so a preferred subcontractor will support one or both of these missions. And so if you have a relationship with an agency, as Ralph was mentioning, and that you can actually help them know that agency, know who the decision makers are, and then perform that work, those are really key to large businesses. The next recommendation is that make sure you deal with the decision makers. Small business subcontractor fairs that the large businesses hold are generally not that productive. It is held with the small business liaison offices. It's an open, come one, come all event. But those fairs generally are not where deals are made. The business development professionals on large procurement or the program managers on an existing contract are the people that have the authority to actually bring on new subcontractors. And so as you are looking at your large opportunities, you have to start in the large companies with the small business liaison officer. You must start there. They will all direct you there. You must get registered with Lockheed or Booz Allen Hamilton or Northrop or CACI or any of the large companies in this area. But what you want to ask from that small business liaison officer, once they understand your capabilities, is to make an introduction for you to meet the business development professionals or to meet the program managers, because those are the people that have the true decision-making authority. Next slide. How to become, again, a preferred supplier. Be a good prime contractor. Make sure that where you are the prime, you have good corporate experience, you have good past performance references, and that you have relationships, again, relationships, we keep saying that word, with key agency executives. If you have those good corporate experience, past performance, and relationships with an agency, you will become a preferred subcontractor, and the prime contractors will search you out because of those relationships. Other attributes of a preferred subcontractor, you have competitive pricing. Price is always important. I like to tell clients the two most important things in dealing with the federal government, that you have good past performance and you have competitive pricing. And so if you want to be a good supplier, make sure you are competitive, that you have key people, strategic hires that you've brought on that would add value to a contract or to a bid. Sometimes a quid pro quo relationship is good. You bid with a large business, and then there's an opportunity on a small business set aside where the large business will support you. And so establishing that long-term quid pro quo relationship is very helpful. Also, as a supplier, that you'll help with the proposal. You'll provide resumes, you'll write your past performance, and that you don't expect the prime contractor, to handle all of those responsibilities. That you can staff up if there's a staffing surge, that your business practices are ethical, and that you have adequate business systems, especially an adequate accounting system, to be able to take a cost type contract or have an adequate timekeeping system to be able to record hours appropriately on a time and material contract.
Mm-hmm.
Some things not to do. Don't lead with your small business status. That is not the most important attribute. Your relationships, your past performance, your unique technical capabilities, that's what you need to lead with. And the fact that you're a small business is a nice to have. That you're a woman-owned business, that's great. You're a small disadvantaged business. All of those certifications are really helpful, but don't lead with that. And don't just depend on being a small business to get you in the door. Another thing is be more than just a staff augmentation service. You know, the large businesses or many companies around the Beltway can provide staffing. But to be really a value-added subcontractor, you have a relationship with an agency. You have a technical niche that other people don't have. So think about, you know, what are your strengths? What are your core capabilities? And really zone in on that. And Ralph mentioned this very thing. Don't try to be all things to all people. Really have a specialty. You know, don't just say, oh, I do IT. Way too broad. Mm-hmm. You know, get a little niche in, I'm a 508 compliance expert. You know, I do database administration. Really take the broad IT market area and skinny it down so that you have a niche and that you have people, past performance and capabilities that fit into that.
One thing I wanted to add right there is, you know, as you go down that road and you become a subcontractor and they put together that teaming agreement, make sure that you have a teaming agreement that specifically speaks to your work share. You don't want to have just 4 bodies or, you know, as appropriate. You want to be able to say, I got the help desk. I'm doing that for you. Boom. Right. So as the help desk grows, you can grow, you know, so that's what we mean by making sure you have a certain area that you have, and then you can work on organically growing that area to your benefit versus theirs. Kind of thing.
Yeah, and just to state the obvious, step 1, make sure you have a teaming agreement.
Yeah.
And then it does include a swim lane,
mm-hmm.
a technical area on where you will provide support.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's move on to what are some of the next steps. The first thing to do, and I think Ralph would echo this, is you've got to do your market research. You have to identify 1 or 2 agencies, drill down into those agencies, into specific departments, and know everything that goes on there. Everything is, of course, overstated, but you need to know who are the prime contractors are there, who are the key people in that agency, what are their current contracts, what does their agency forecast look like. Everything that you can learn about that agency and who performs work there today, how they buy, understanding, do they buy on a fixed price basis, on a cost reimbursable basis? Are they buying only services, or are they also buying supplies? Doing that market research. And then once you've identified how they buy, what they buy, who they buy from, then targeting those prime contractors who already today have contracts in place and trying to get in through their small business liaison officers and then getting into meeting the program managers. So market research is first. There is assistance available both at the Small Business Administration and at our local DC SCORE office. And if you want to talk about how to enter this space or how to, you know, do the market research in more detail, we're both there to help you. And then if you go to the next slide, Janine, before we open it up for questions, this is our contact information. I'm Karen Williams. I'm at the DC SCORE office. My email is at scorevolunteer.org. Ralph, obviously with SBA, there's his email address. And as Janine indicated when we launched this webinar, you will be getting a copy of the webinar and of the slides, and it will be posted on the Washington, D.C. SCORE website if you want to share it with any of your colleagues. And so with that, we've left some time for questions. Janine, have we had any questions come in from our audience today?
Oh, yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you loud and clear.
Okay. One was, can we also cover how to subcontract in general, such as private sector business? Or can you point out some resources that help for private sector?
Yeah, that's a good question. What we have really focused on today is the federal space, because the federal space has those mandatory subcontracting goals in the subcontracting plans that Ralph mentioned. And so all of the prime contractors will have to have developed a subcontracting plan. Ralph then monitors those plans to make sure that the primes meet those goals. In the commercial space, many of the local Metro DC companies, the large companies, also are very proactive in subcontracting. But there's not one place to go. Like, let's just say if you were interested in supporting Pepco. Pepco, you would go to their website. As Ralph mentioned, they have a diversity program. You would register with Pepco as a small business or a socioeconomic categorized small business, and then you would learn about their opportunities. But you have to go to each of those large businesses directly. There's not an overarching SBA that kind of monitors those private companies. There's another resource, though, that you can use in addition to trying to figure out where should I go to contact those commercial companies. Here in DC, the Washington Business Journal publishes a marvelous publication every year called the Book of Lists. And if you are looking for the top companies in any given industry, the Book of Lists provides you with the top 25 companies, the top 25 advertising agencies, the top 25 law firms, the top 25 nonprofits, et cetera, et cetera. And so that can become, if you're, let's say, in the legal space and are looking to provide services to the legal community, the Book of Lists is a great place to start because they've actually done that market research and consolidation for you.
Okay. Are the research tips the same for nonprofits seeking to contract as well? Small business and disadvantaged businesses designations also apply to nonprofits?
Yeah. The techniques are going to be exactly the same. It's just that in some instances, some of those nonprofits will actually be looked at as a large business versus a small business. But the mechanics of, let me get started, let me develop my relationships, let me, that's all going to be basically the same. It's just that from a subcontracting standpoint, especially when I monitor it, I have to look at those guys a little bit differently. It just behooves you to, I would have, my pipeline would be big enough that I could encapsulate all of those folks, the state and local folks, the nonprofits, all of those things. Don't make sure you overturn every stone to make sure that you have what you need. But I want you guys to do it in a fashion of staying in your lane and staying within that agency or that state or local government. Try not to get too broad too fast. There's a tenet in business development that says you don't want to be a mile wide, but only an inch deep. So you want to have some substance to you. And as you're drilling down in that org chart, that's how you get the substance.
Okay, we have another question. What's the difference between being a subcontractor and being part of a mentor protege program?
Okay, you want to?
Go ahead, I'll jump in.
The difference basically is, I'm going to call it legality. Okay, if you think about a teaming relationship, that's just us coming together for convenience, for that opportunity. Thank you. We've gone on. Maybe we do some stuff together. We flip-flop, whatever it might be. When you're talking about mentor protege, especially as it relates to the 8A program, and now we have the all small mentor protege program. But that is literally a large company saying that they're going to put their arm around this small company and show them the way. Okay, so it is, when you hear mentor protege, I immediately want you guys to think of large business providing small business management and technical assistance. Okay, so you've gone to SCORE and you've worked with them and things are wonderful, and now you've met a couple of companies and you're starting to do some work together, and they decide they want to be a mentor. That is what that's about. Teaming is is deal by deal. So think about mentor protege is, I'm just putting my arm around you and I'm going to show you the way. Team and agreement is deal by deal.
Right. So the new all small mentor protege program that Ralph mentioned is a relatively new program, just kicked off a year ago, where small businesses can enter a long-term, hopefully, relationship with a large prime. It's not deal by deal. It could be for years. And SBA has launched that. They have a specific part of their website that deals with just the all small mentor protege program. It is not a matching program. You as the small business have to identify the large business and then come to terms with what that agreement's going to be. But it is an amazing opportunity that used to just be available for 8A companies, and now SBA within the last year has opened it up for all small businesses. We also did a webinar on this topic with the All Small Program Office, and if you go to the washingtondc.score.org URL that's here posted on this slide, you can get a copy of SBA's slides about that program and listen to that webinar.
Okay. One question was, what is a teaming agreement and what should it include? I'm sure you can't go into that right now, but is there a resource maybe that they can be directed to find out that information, Karen?
You guys probably have, right? Let me just go with the quick and dirty, okay? You're going to have about 5 pages of stuff that just talks about whereas and wherefore and thou shalt, yada, 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 and then somebody's going to try to sign, right? One of the things I want you guys to do is make sure you have an attorney that can look that stuff over for you. They're all kind of generic and vanilla, but I want to make sure that you guys are covered up. Speaking of that, I've come up with my own acronym, if you will, and I tell businesses to think of the word basic. If you can remember the word basic, that's going to be your crew, okay? The B is for bank. The A is for the attorney. The S is for the SBA resource partner. The I is for the insurance. And the C is for the CPA. Now, you don't really need the CPA right away, right? But eventually, you're going to blow up. And then when Karen talked about some of those contracts that are cost plus fixed fee, you might need an accountant at that point. When you get large enough or you get more sophisticated, that's what it's going to be about. But back to the question. So you have those 4 or 5 pages that are fairly generic and just have an attorney look at it. And then the pages that come after that are those exhibits that I was talking about. So you want an exhibit A, exhibit 1 that says, subcontract the company XYZ to provide help desk services. You're going to bill every other Friday. You expect to get paid those Fridays in between, what your rates are going to be, things of that nature, and you should sign. So if you can think of the agreement as one thing, and then there's these attachments along them for what I would consider most prominently worksheet.
Absolutely. And what it basically does is protect you that if you're bidding with a large business or with another subcontractor and that company, your prime, wins the work, that you will get a subcontract. It's just the legal agreement that codifies that relationship.
Okay. Next question. How do you overcome, excuse me, how do you overcome not having prior performance for companies just beginning?
Okay. So for companies just beginning, I'm gonna talk about somebody that hasn't just begun, but and then I'll back it up. There's what's known as neutral past performance. So you are neither good or bad. Obviously, you want great past performance. You don't want bad past performance. But you can have neutral past performance. That is past performance that is the capability of the principles of that company. So what you have done in your lifetime is past performance. That's why you really want to have a small business as opposed to just kind of hanging your shingle and doing it as a freelance 1099. Because as a freelance 1099, it's not past performance, if you will, for your company. It's past performance for the individual. So for someone that doesn't have past performance, what I'm saying is who you are, what you've done, your resume is your past performance. And that's why it's so very important to not be too broad early on, because you got to jump in one place, dig one hole, and from that hole, you're going to start working from there.
Okay, next question. What is required to self-certify as a woman-owned business for federal business?
Good question. So there are a couple of things. First of all, you must be working full-time in the business at the point in time when you want to do the certification. You must be registered in SAM, the System for Award Management. You, as the female owner or owners, must own 51% of the business and be responsible for the day-to-day management of that operation. It can't just be in name only. Once you are certified in SAM and you are working full-time in the business, the self-certification process actually happens at the SBA.gov website. And so you certify online at sba.certify.gov. You have to upload a copy of your driver's license. You have to answer a series of less than 10 questions. And you have to provide a copy of your company's articles of organization for your LLC or company that proves that you own 51% of the business. Mm-hmm. Once you have done that and uploaded all of your documents to sba.certify.gov, you then go back into SAM and you change your certification to a woman-owned small business. Again, we did with SBA, we did a webinar on how to do this certification process that can be found at washingtondc.score.org. The slides and the webinar are there for you to download.
And what I will do, Karen, I'll reference that in the replay page.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks, Janine.
Okay. With the SBA Subnet, can any small business register online, or is it something a small business will have to submit an application?
Say that, I missed.
No, they just look for opportunities there. Subnet.
Subnet, yeah. No, they don't have to register. No, you just look for the opportunities there.
Large contractors, large primes will post their subcontracting opportunities there. And so to Ralph's point, when he's beaten up on them about compliance, that they're not meeting their subcontracting goals, the traditional response is, well, I couldn't find anybody. Well, now there's a way for the primes to actually post those opportunities where they are looking for small businesses so that everyone can see. And so if you see it there on Subnet, you can then contact the prime contractor.
Okay, we have a few more. And kind of like a comment. Primes are happy to hire me as W-2 employees, but will not subcontract to me as a single member LLC. Do you have an idea why?
I do. So contractors have more control over employees than they do subcontractors. And so if you're a key person on the bid or someone that they really want to ensure, stays on the contract for a longer period of time, they would want you to be an employee. They actually many times are able to spread costs over employees, overhead and G&A costs, which they don't spread over subcontractors. So there are several reasons why primes would prefer you to be an employee over a one-person LLC.
Okay, I've seen your training on fbo.gov. Are there additional courses on research and business development on the SBA/SCORE websites?
In the federal marketplace, I'm trying to think of the DC SCORE. No, we have a lot of training courses on score.org, but there are, and business development, there is how to market or how to sell your product. You would find on score.org, but there is not a webinar on the federal marketplace.
There's not in SCORE, but if you go to SBA.gov, we have a learning center. So up in the navigation, just type in the word learning center. And I know that they have a federal market, go-to-market kind of, they have these vignettes that are about 15 or so minutes long. And you can kind of slice and dice and look at subjects that you want to learn more about.
And one of the one of the kind of wonderful things about living in the Metro DC area, there are a lot of cost-effective workshops or webinars or seminars to really start this process. I mean, at SCORE, we have a series of federal government workshops, the women's business centers, the SBDCs. There are so many wonderful resource partners with very effective programs in the federal space, and you should take advantage of those and leverage those.
Okay, we're rounding up. This has a few parts. This person currently has a business license and a DUNS. Is that all you need to begin subcontracting, or do you require anything else?
The answer is no. You have to have a tax ID and a DUNS. And if you're interested in the federal space, you need to be registered in SAM, and you need that all-important past performance.
Okay. And on usspending.gov, I see the awardees, but I can't see the SOW. Is there another site to research that information?
Yes. So after a contract has been awarded, it'll get posted on the fpds.gov, and there will be an identifier. It's called a procurement identifier, which actually is the contract number. You can submit a request under the Freedom of Information Act. It's called a FOIA request into the issuing agency and request a copy of that contract. When you get a copy of that contract, you will have the complete statement of work. The other option is that if it was posted on fbo.gov, FedBizOps, you can always go back into the archives and get a copy of the statement of work that was posted prior to the award.
Okay, and I think we have one final question. We're rounding out the hour. There are pre-solicitations put out all the time. How can you prepare for the pre-solicitations, or where does the information come from? Is there a warning order system somewhere for the pre-solicitations?
Okay, I'm gonna do this as quickly as I can. But again, the pre-solicitation, or the government might call it an intent for solicitation or intent for RFP, sources sought. You know, when you're coming down that acquisition life cycle, you're going to get to a forecast first. You're going to get to a notice of sources sought next. Eventually, especially large procurements, you'll get an intent for the solicitation. That's just telling you it's coming out in 30 days. And then the RFP will come out. All I'm trying to tell you guys to do is get back as far as you can to the left in that discussion, so that you have done everything you can to know as much as you can before that RFP comes out. You should be helping them write the RFP, okay? So when you hear somebody say, this has come out and it's got Karen Williams' name all over it, you know, Karen Williams Associates, that's what she's supposed to do. And that's what I want you guys to do. So instead of being everywhere, narrow it back in, get back in the life cycle of that agency, of that office that you're studying. Study, become the smartest person in that room, and you'll drive the discussion on when some of those things will come out. Hey, if you do it the right way, they won't even come out. You might do it, it might be sole source or set aside or something like that, and the big boys won't even get it.
Okay, Karen. Just to let everyone know that we will be forwarding the questions to the presenters. Unfortunately, we cannot answer all of them. There was some excellent one. And the last one, real quick, they just want to, is there a cost to register with SAM, Karen?
It's free.
It's free. Okay. Any closing words, Ralph or Karen?
Yeah, I want to thank Ralph and the SBA for co-hosting this webinar with us at SCORE. Both SBA and SCORE are here to help. That's our sole purpose in life, is help small business, help entrepreneurs. And please feel free to reach out to either of us or both of us.
We could not do it without SCORE. SCORE is our subcontractor.
Yeah,
okay, so we got a lot of work to do, a lot of stuff to do. What you guys do matters. 90% of all businesses are you. So we reach out to our subcontractors, SCORE, SBDC, Women's Business Center, Veteran Business Outreach Center. They are our subcontractors, and they go from there.
We're just called resource partners.
There you go.
Right? But thank you all for attending, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. Janine, thank you very much, and we will end the webinar now.
Okay, thanks everyone for attending. Remember, you will receive a copy of the webinar within 24 to 40 hours. And what we also will do, we will reference the other webinars that Karen mentioned on that page as well, so that you can take a look at those webinars. Wishing everyone a great day and have a good rest of the week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.